I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful bio you have. So for anyone that may have got off an aeroplane from Mars today, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, your role? How many hats do you actually wear?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. So my title is Chief Media Rights and Broadcasting Officer. So ostensibly I'm responsible for, along with my team, licensing the core media rights for the Formula One World Championship to, we used to say TV stations, but obviously that's a little out of date, but basically different channels and platforms around the world. That's our core business, of course. I also oversee the production. Very pleased to say we have some enormously talented people that do that very, very well. And also oversee the sort of non-core content, whether that's highlights, content that goes onto social media, or whether it's, you mentioned Drive to Survive, the film, and various other sort of ancillary right properties.
It's never a dull moment for you, right? I mean, it really has changed. And you told me this fact earlier today, but how long have you worked with F1?
It'll be 25 years next year.
Amazing. I mean, pretty, and how much it's changed in those 25 years. But we'll talk about media, we're talking about and strategy. How has F1 strategy evolved in the last 5 years, especially with the way streaming and digital platforms are rising? Everyone used to, we said this, someone said it earlier today, it used to be that you'd get up off the sofa and turn the channel of one of 3 or 4, but now everything is direct to consumer and stuff. So how are you playing with that?
I think we have to go back a little more than 5 years, probably 7 or 8 years, effectively, when the business was bought by Liberty Media. New owners, new CEO, new president, new top management, and they came in and took a very different philosophy in regard to how we should run our business. Ostensibly focusing on the fact that we're in the business of entertainment. It's sport, of course, but ultimately we're competing for people's time. And people just don't just spend their spare time sat in front of a television or a laptop or a tablet. So something like gaming is as competitive with us as the Champions League. So once you acknowledge that fact, that starts to inform you in regard to how we should conduct our business. And as I said, Liberty were very much pushing that. And I kind of cringe a little bit. Quite often, if Lewis Hamilton's interviewed about how things were in the past, a long time ago, and said he used to receive letters or notes or faxes probably from Formula One telling him that he shouldn't be filming content on his phone and pushing it out. I'm afraid that was probably from me, albeit instructed to do so by a certain Bernard Charles Eccleston.
And you were sending the fax?
Yeah. We actually had a telex when it started, but less said about that, the better.
And I guess, you know, with the whole direct-to-fan is exciting, right? I mean, is it just about the live race itself, or what else is going on?
I think it's important to recognize that our core product is the on-track action, whether it's qualifying, practice, the race, of course. And we spend a great deal of time, effort, money to make sure that that product is as good as it can be. And we're continuing to innovate. The production itself is remarkable, especially given the movement that the championship obviously does and how it needs to be set up, taken down and reset up. So that's ostensibly the core product. Outside of that, you know, we've spent increasing amount of time on, as I said, the non-core content, ensuring that we have different types of F1 content that appeals to different people.
And such as?
Yeah, look, we got lucky with Drive to Survive. I don't think anyone anticipated or realized how successful it would be. Before that, we dabbled a little bit with documentaries, mostly just licensing footage, not really sort of taking more of an involved role. Probably the most successful documentary was the Senna film that was made some years ago. But Drive to Survive was certainly a turning point. And to start with, it garnered a pretty significant audience. Series 2 dropped off a little bit, which was to be expected. Apparently Netflix says it always happens like that. And then Series 3 was 50% up and continued to rise. And it's been pretty stable. And we're 8 series, or will be 8 series in now, and which is unheard of. But I think the point behind that is an important point. And one of the reasons for its success was that in the past, Formula One, your engagement with Formula One was watching the cars on the track. And if you think about the drivers, you see the top 6 inches of their head in a helmet. Occasionally, you might see them without a helmet on. Yeah, bumping up and down. But you never really got the opportunity to engage with them. Sure, they're being interviewed in a press conference situation, but that's a stage situation. So really, it was probably the first time, even for avid Formula One watchers, that they've had an opportunity to sort of get a proper feel and understanding and viewpoint about what goes on away from the car amongst the team. And I think the best thing that happened to us with this property, with Drive to Survive, was the fact in year 1, Mercedes and Ferrari didn't want to be in it. They were too focused on trying to win the championship. And we went ahead and made it anyway, and it was a great success. And I think that immediately demonstrated to us that people are interested in people, in stories. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's the year after the championship, so we all know who won. But more importantly, it was demonstrating that you don't just need to win a race to be interesting. And there were plenty of stories that told you more about a team or more about an individual. And if you look at the characters over the years that have been sort of probably the biggest characters and best known, they're not necessarily the World Championship winners. In fact, far from it. Whether it's Daniel Ricciardo, Günther Steiner, Otmar Safnauer, people that are almost non-core participants, but because they've been featured and they've got interesting backstories, they've become a lot more well-known. And I think that's been a lesson to us, just in terms of how we go about our storytelling.
And I imagine a real win-win for the drivers as well, because if you're not on the top 3 or you're not the front of the grid, you're not going to get that much coverage. But all of a sudden, it gives them more coverage, more exposure. Therefore, there's a financial win in there usually as well. I mean, it's just a win-win, right? Yeah,
it's delicate with everyone. For the series to work, it needs the buy-in and participation of the teams and the drivers, and for that we're super grateful, because they have provided over the years many opportunities away from the track, sometimes within their own families or households or marriages, and like most people, their time is valuable to them, especially away from the track. So it has required their involvement, but ultimately you're right, in that the whole Formula One ecosystem has benefited from the series. It's not the only reason that we've enjoyed the growth that we're enjoying at the moment, but taking the previous session in terms of valuation of teams, team sponsors, our sponsors, the beauty about Drive to Survive is that it's not how many people watched it, but who watched it. And the who being people who don't necessarily sit down on a Sunday afternoon and watch a live race. So it's kind of like a double valuation.
And is that how you're reaching out to a younger audience, or are there other strategies in there as well?
Yes. We are a lot more prolific on social media, which is not hard if the starting point is 0. We like to talk about these percentage growths, but I don't think we actually did anything 7 years ago. But no, clearly, as it is for many different IP holders, that is a place where people are engaging and they're consuming content, and it's part of our policy or philosophy that we want to have content that's served to different people in different ways all of the time. So social media has been very important. And not just that, it's been the sort of democratization of the social media, and that we have these social media guidelines that most people ignore. But effectively encouraging the drivers, the teams, the circuits, the sponsors, our sponsors, also to engage on social media, which is a different position to the one we used to take, which was trying to ban everyone from exploiting any content. Matthew Marsh over there would probably remember some of that. But it's been very much making sure that it's not just us pushing content out, it's other people, and in particular with the drivers who have significant followings. That's also been very helpful.
And I think, looking at kind of, you talk about partnerships and rights and what have you, and how much that's changed. When you're looking at broadcast partners, it's going to be interesting how long this word broadcast can survive, right? Maybe we'll ask the teenagers next. But what are the key factors you look for beyond, say, a rights fee?
I'm not going to lie, rights fees are important. But yeah, it's other things such as availability. But I think availability is something that we need to think about more carefully. Availability normally means you're talking about free-to-air television, linear free-to-air television. And I was talking earlier with someone about this, is that I think there's a misunderstanding. Carve out some rights to put on, I'm going to use a UK example, put on the BBC, because that will bring in the young fans. No, it won't. Just because it's free doesn't mean the young fans are going to watch it. Put it on YouTube, Snap, TikTok, whatever, then yes. So we carve out content that we reserve the right to put on our social media platforms. And certainly in YouTube, that's where you're more likely to engage with the younger audience. So this whole free-to-air pay TV thing it's still important, but it needs to be looked at quite carefully. If all you're governed by is Nielsen ratings, how many people sit down on a Sunday afternoon and watch your race, then clearly in Germany, RTL is going to deliver a bigger audience than Sky Germany. But I think you have to look further than that and understand who's watching on what devices, rather than just thinking that just because something's free, it's available. So when we look at what a broadcast partner, use the word, does, it's more than just how they'll schedule a show. And then the other thing we look at is what they'll do around the content. Sure, they'll take a feed from us and they'll broadcast it live, but ultimately, what production will they bring? Will they send a presentation team to the event? I think we've all seen that, the pre and post. We're here in Singapore. We'll be here, from a television point of view, from a production point of view, for 3 days, 4 days actually. Driver interviews are on, and team principal interviews on Thursday. So 4 days. There's 4 days of content. So we're interested in encouraging our partners also to be on site. But if they can't, because not everyone can afford to go to 24 different venues across the year, it's expensive, we do a lot of production where, call it F1 Insight, but it's basically a cloud-based system where we capture off-track content, interviews, Voxbox, whatever it might be. And when we started this about 5 years ago, we probably put up half a dozen pieces of content a weekend. Now I think we put up almost 100. So it gives our broadcast partners content to build their own shows, even if they're not at the event. And if they build their own shows, it's better content, they're going to be on air for longer, sponsors are going to get more exposure, and there's more value for them. So that's important.
So it's just never a dull moment. It's not just turning up, shooting the race and going home. What markets are you now most focused on growing Formula One's audience? And that could be geographical, demographic. Where are the target markets?
Geographically, I think we've made no secret of the fact that the US has been very important to us, and we've made significant efforts to try and grow Formula One in the USA. We have 3 races there now. The Las Vegas Grand Prix, we're actually the promoter. So that, I think, represents a fairly significant investment. But we've worked hard to try and increase our relevance there. It's a big market. There's no point worrying about the NFL or the NBA, but ultimately it's a very significant market. It brings sponsorship value as well. So that's been and will remain a big focus. Asia, we haven't replaced yet the Malaysian Grand Prix. I personally think that we're an Asian race light. We've got some interesting discussions going on, but ultimately, I'd like to see another race in Asia, if, under the right circumstances. And it's a big market. You don't need me to tell you, very big market. But also, we shouldn't. We talk a lot about the likes of, say, Germany and Brazil, established Formula One markets, big brands, manufacturers. You got Mercedes. But ultimately, some of these markets, maybe they slow down in places. So it's not just looking for the new, it's also focusing on what's been there a long time, and making sure that, big established markets don't drop off.
And what then is the next big innovation that we might see in how you're broadcast or streamed or whatever verb we get to use now?
I don't think it's a case of one big technical innovation. I mean, behind the scenes, we changed our entire production. We employ a philosophy that's called remote production, which is kind of the holy grail of sports coverage, where obviously the capture has to take place at the circuit, but the program's produced back in England, and that saves a huge amount of freighting equipment and people. So the production is always something that we are enhancing wherever we can. And it's probably more of a case of a significant number of small tweaks and changes, whether that's technically, editorially. People talk a lot about the noise. Some of the older fans wish that it was louder. And, there are things behind the scenes. It should be a little bit louder next year. It won't be a V10.
Did we hear that here first?
Don't know. I think it's been mentioned. Drones. Drones seems to be discussed a lot at the moment. We obviously have had helicopters for quite some time. But certainly drones, we feel, open some opportunities that we want to pursue, some filming opportunities. Always seems to be the case with new technology. There are more hurdles that are placed there, more restrictions and authorities and so on and so forth. What if a drone fell out of the sky? Well, what if a helicopter fell out of the sky? But we're pushing there. I'd like to see some more use of drones, a bit closer, a bit lower, but working with the appropriate authorities.
They're banned in Singapore.
We've been pushing hard. I still don't know whether we've got them. We think we've got them this weekend.
Okay, fantastic. Again, you heard that here first, ladies and gentlemen. Look for the drones.
Maybe.
Look for the drones. Okay, and then final question. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but so the next 5 years, what's up next for F1? What does success look like for you specifically with your media? And I'm going to use that word broadcast one more time, but with the whole strategy of communication strategy.
Well, first of all, the product, the on-track product. Next year, big, massive technical changes. Literally throw away everything you know. Huge changes to the entire car, the engine, et cetera, et cetera. That will throw up some new challenges. No guarantee that the people at the front of the grid will remain at the front of the grid. Saying that, we've got two new teams. We've got Audi coming in to take over from Sauber, and obviously Cadillac, who will find it tough to start with, but they're both big companies, and it will be nice over the next few years to see them become more competitive. From a production point of view, whether or not we can squeeze out a few more series of Drive to Survive, will be dictated to by the audience. If the audience remains, it'll remain. Maybe we'll see a sequel to the F1 movie. It's now the highest grossing sports movie of all time, which us and Apple are very happy about. So perhaps we'll see another one of those. But I'd also like to see Formula One showing up in different places. Personally, I've been on a crusade to create some sort of travel and food show. We're lucky enough to race into super cool places. Obviously a light touch back to the sport, but ultimately they're both big genres of television. Use the word television. So I'd like to see Formula One, as I said, showing up in different areas.
Fantastic. I mean, I could genuinely talk to you about this forever, but we are out of time. It's been brilliant chatting, and thank you so much for coming here, because I do know how busy you are. What's been wonderful is we started the week with Adam, who closes all the roads, and then we're finishing the week with the guy who then puts the cameras up and films everything and distributes and all that kind of stuff. So it's been kind of a beginning to end of behind the scenes for the Grand Prix. Now I guess we hand it over to the teams, right, and let the drivers do their thing. But we talked about F1 is entertainment, the racing is the core product, but the people and the stories, creating heroes and telling those stories. The rights are always important, but you're talking about carving out the different bits of content, and the off-track content is as important sometimes as the on-track content. You talk about wanting more Asia, and there's lots of rumors about that. And it's constant change, including the drones. So look, I think it's been fabulous and fascinating listening to you, Ian. Thank you so much. Good luck with this weekend.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything in the future. Thanks
very much. Thank you.